Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jason Zacher, the Senior Vice President of Business Advocacy here at the Greenville Chamber. We host these Community Matters discussions to connect you with local, state, and national leaders and get your questions answered. So you can find past recordings as well as the upcoming Community Matters schedule at greenvillechamber.org. So real quick for everybody on here right now, all attendees should be on mute with your cameras turned off. And you can submit your questions as we go on through the chat feature. Today, I'm speaking with Matt Efert. He's the Director of Office of Management and Budget for the City of Greenville. Matt, thank you very much for joining us today. I know this is going to be a hot topic. I'm sure you all have been getting a lot of questions on this too.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
So real quick before we start, I wanted to give you all a little background. And Matt, if you want to go ahead and cue up your presentation while I'm doing this. We worked with this business license fee issue for the last 4 or 5 years here at the Chamber, trying to make sure that we could streamline and standardize the process statewide. We were hearing from businesses across the state that it was a huge issue trying to deal with a lot of different towns, a lot of different cities, especially for folks, realtors, contractors, franchisees, other folks that had presence in multiple jurisdictions. In 2020, we finally got legislation passed that streamlined and standardized the process, and Matt will get into some of what it means for you here in the city of Greenville in just a moment. But we worked very closely with Matt. We worked very closely with the city manager, John McDonough, Mayor Knox White, as well as the mayors and city managers in other towns across the upstate. And I think that the Greenville Chamber, our Upstate Chamber Coalition partners, as well as the Charleston Chamber, did a good job in trying to bridge the gap and come up with the compromise that allowed them to not lose a lot of city revenue, but still make this a lot easier and a lot more business friendly. And I think that's what this bill will do. However, now all these cities and towns are going to have to start implementing new ordinances. And so that's where we're keeping an eye on these things for you. And that's why we invited Matt here today. The city unveiled their ordinance last week. They put it off. They put debate off on it for 2 weeks so that the business community would have time to respond. And so that's why we're bringing this to you today so that Matt can answer your questions and give a short presentation on exactly what is changing and what you will see when you go to apply for your business license fee next year. So with that, Matt, go ahead and start your presentation. We look forward to hearing from you.
Okay. So this is a copy of the presentation that we've shared twice with City Council, once at a work session in early October, and then a few weeks ago at the first reading of the ordinance. So this is information that's already been available publicly. We'll go through kind of background. What is a business license? Why does the city charge a business license? What's changing and why? What our existing class and rate structures look like for businesses, what the impact of these changes are to city businesses. And then something I'm really excited to discuss is the economic development incentives that are developed as part of this new ordinance, and then timeline and next steps. So starting with the basics, what's a business license? This is it's unique in every state. I've worked in 3 states now. In the municipal government space, and it's different every state. So in South Carolina, business licenses are excise tax. This is charged on doing businesses within a jurisdiction, a city or a county. In the city of Greenville, these revenues make up about 1/4 of our general fund budget. Business license taxes finance our general city services, so police, fire, public works, administration, things like that. Why business license is important to the city? The revenue made up by the business license tax, if we had to make up that revenue with our other primary revenue source, which is property taxes, would require about a 40% increase in our property tax rate, which hits everybody. So that's one of the variances of South Carolina local government finance is heavy reliance on the business license and not so much on property taxes. Business license taxes are very common in South Carolina. Almost all cities and about 20% of counties in South Carolina charge a business license tax. So what's changing? So as Jason mentioned, the General Assembly passed the Business License Standardization Act in 2020. There were a number of changes in the bill. The most significant are listed here. So the first would be a statewide renewal date. Again, this is important for you businesses that have operations in multiple jurisdictions where you would have had, Greenville's due in February, Columbia due in April, et cetera. Now statewide, any business license in the state will be renewed on April 30th. A standardized definition of gross income. So there were situations in which some cities were doing allowable deductions and things like that. And now there's a standardized state definition of gross income. A standardized application. So this is based on the Municipal Association of South Carolina model application. The city of Greenville accepts either that application or our own. So you can use whichever works best for your business, particularly if you're filing in multiple jurisdictions. A standardized business class schedule. So this is a big change for us. And this classifies all businesses in the state based on their NAICS code, your North American Industry Classification System. I believe you all are using that already for your tax filings. You're categorized for that for many other purposes. So it should be a familiar number to you. The bill established a state-run online renewal portal run by the State Department of Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. The city launched our online renewal portal last year. And so for our upcoming renewal, you'll be able to renew either using the statewide portal if you're filing for multiple jurisdictions. You can use the city's portal, or you can continue to use the application via mail. The final big change in the bill was a standardized appeals process statewide. So those are the changes driven by the state law. What we need to do to comply, we have to repeal and replace our existing business license ordinance. And so that's the ordinance that went to City Council last week to repeal and replace. We have to reclassify all of our businesses by their NAICS code and the standardized class schedule. That class schedule is adopted at the state level and will change every 2 years whenever 1 year after the IRS updates the NAICS codes. We have to rebalance our rate structure to prevent a windfall. So one of the things in the law is that when we redo our business license structure, we couldn't do it in a way to generate significant additional revenue. The baseline was for 2020 revenue. So this is based on business filings and earnings in 2019. So on a pre-COVID level. We've got to notify the businesses of the new class schedule, rate schedule, and timeline for changes. And we have to have this ordinance adopted and put in place by December 31st. So the bottom line is we're significantly changing our rate structure and the way we operate our business license program while keeping our revenue at or below the 2020 level. So for those of you who have filed business license before, you may be familiar with our current class and rate schedule. So there are 15 classes of business currently in the city. Resident businesses differ from non-resident businesses, and generally that means that non-resident businesses who enter the city temporarily pay double the rate that a resident business pays. Fees are charged on a base amount. So generally the first $2,000 of revenue is charged a base amount, and then incremental charges for each $1,000 of revenue above that. And then our existing rate schedule had rate caps on certain categories. So our new class schedule has 9 classifications. Classes 1 through 7 are based on your business's NAICS code. So the first digit of your business's NAICS code will be the class. Class 8 is for businesses that have specific state ordered exemptions or special treatment. So things like contractors, railroads, amusements, and arcades that are charged differently than other businesses. Class 9 is for businesses that do not fit neatly in our normal class schedule or have unique circumstances, and you'll see what some of those are. We've continued to keep resident businesses and non-resident businesses, the distinction there. So non-resident business will continue to pay at double the rate of our resident businesses. We've got the same base plus incremental charge. And then we have a declining scale in our new rate structure based on high grossing businesses. So this is the proposed rate structure. So you see classes 1 through 7, that's kind of the baseline. So you pay a $40 base fee on your first $2,000 of revenue. And then for each $1,000 of additional revenue, you pay $1.60 if you were a business in class 1. These class 8s, as I mentioned, these have specific legislative carve-outs. They're charged differently based on state law. And then class 9 are businesses that have unique circumstances in the city. So auto dealers is one. Their natural classification is as a retailer or wholesaler. If they were charged that rate on the level of inventory they have, their business license fees would be significantly higher than if we carve them out and separate them from other retail wholesale type businesses. As I mentioned, there's a declining scale. So businesses that make $10 million or less in gross revenues, they get it, the scale is applied at 100%. On your next incremental revenue between 10 and 25 million, the revenue above 10 million is charged at 75% of the stated rate, and so on and so forth. So the impact to city businesses, we have approximately 9,500 licensed businesses in the city of Greenville. Under this proposed rate structure, a little over 8,000 or approximately 85% of our licensed businesses will see lower business license fees than our current structure. The average decrease is over $200 per business, and 60% of businesses that are seeing reduced fees will see their fees go down by at least $100. So significant benefit to a lot of our businesses. On the flip side, there are about 1,400 businesses, so around 15% of our city businesses that will see increased fees, an average increase of $1,200 per business, but that's a little bit off keel because of some significant changes. The median increase is only $60. Half of our businesses that will see fee increases will see an increase of $50 or less. So for those 15% of city businesses, most of you will see your fees increase 10% or less. This is just an example of a few classes of business based on the first $100,000 of gross revenue. And so the way this chart is oriented, we have business type, what they would be charged under the existing ordinance, what they would be charged under the proposed rate schedule, what the difference is, and then how many businesses in that classification are going to see decreased fees. So you can see retailers on your first $100,000 of gross revenue, the fee would go down by $47, and 99.8% of retailers are going to see decreased fees under this rate structure. Again, you can follow the chart down and see for most of these type of businesses, you are going to see lower fees, and significant chunk of each business type is going to see reduced fees. So lastly, one of the things that council took an opportunity as we were redoing the model ordinance, you all may be familiar with, we had some targeted abatements for business license in the past. And so when adopting the standardized model ordinance, we no longer were able to offer those type of incentives. And so we have built a standalone economic development ordinance that allows for greater flexibility and a new tool for our economic development staff to promote existing and new businesses, address specific economic development needs in the city, and allows greater control of incentive payments, and allows the public to see that we are getting the investment and job creation that we are incentivizing through these tools. So there are a couple levels of incentives proposed, and council has approved these on first reading. So we'll go for final approval concurrently with the rest of the business license, hopefully at second meeting in November, so November 22nd. So the first tier of economic development incentives is for new businesses. And so these targeted new businesses listed here: artists in the Central Business District, West End, and Village of West Greenville; retail in the Central Business District and West End; manufacturing or corporate headquarters located anywhere in the city; grocery stores located in special emphasis neighborhoods; and any commercial property annexed into the city. We're proposing a 5-year 100% business license rebate. For existing businesses in those classifications listed here, we're proposing a 50% rebate for the next 5 years. So once we put the new rate structure in place, when you file in the spring, existing businesses in these classifications will be able to claim a rebate for the next 5 years. Second tier is for, this is a citywide opportunity. If you're not one of those businesses listed on the previous page, but you're bringing in at least 10 new jobs and making a capital investment in property within the city of at least $500,000, we're going to offer a business license and permit fee rebate. And you can see there's a scale there, capping out at a 3-year 100% business license rebate and 100% permit fee rebate. For our targeted priority investment areas, these are the city's commercial corridors: Wade Hampton, Lawrence, Pendleton, Pleasantburg, Haywood, Stone, and Augusta. Those incentives kick in at a lower level. So if you're creating at least 5 jobs and a $250,000 capital investment, you'll qualify for a business license and permit fee rebate. So that's the changes, and those are the proposed new economic development incentives. And I'll open it up back to Jason for questions.
Sorry, I was muted. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I have a couple here, Matt, that I wanted to ask you. One thing, I wanted to thank you all for the economic development ordinance. I think, as you saw at the city council meeting last week, there was fairly universal support for that among council. That was particularly with the grocery store issue, as we talk about food deserts and other issues like that inside the city. I think those are some really good proposals. There was one question that was answered quickly, and that was at the meeting. I wanted to just mention it for folks real quick. There are a lot of changes to for-hire vehicles, and so the question, I know that deals mostly with taxis, but there were questions about Uber and Lyft, whether that would impact that. Can you go ahead and just address that really fast?
Yes, so Uber and Lyft are regulated by the state under a preemption. So the city does not regulate Uber and Lyft type businesses. The changes made in our proposed business license ordinance reduce the restrictions on taxi cab companies to bring them closer to parity to the rideshare companies. And so taxi cab businesses in the city will see a more fair application of our business license and lower fees compared to the existing structure.
Okay. There were also criminal penalties included in here, which raised some eyeballs from a bunch of folks. And you mentioned to me earlier that they actually are already in the ordinance as it is, correct?
Yes. So a lot of the work in repealing and replacing our existing business license ordinance involves moving. So number one, adopting the language of the Municipal Association Model Ordinance. And number two, moving existing code sections to a new location in the new ordinance. And so the penalty structure in the proposed ordinance is the same as in the existing ordinance and is actually less onerous than allowed by state law. So our maximum penalty of $500 per day is about half of what the state authorizes. And this is a situation that happens very rarely. And so while it's it's a draconian step, it's not one that's applied very often.
Yeah. One of the things you had mentioned, and you mentioned the non-resident rates and some of those other issues, especially with special circumstances. The new rate under your in the ordinance, the new rate for the first $2,000 for contractors says $60 plus. I think that some contractors have reached out asking, what does plus mean to that?
So for the contractor businesses, like the other businesses, the $60 refers to the base rate. And so on your first $2,000 of revenue, you pay $60 plus the incremental rate on $1,000 of additional revenue. And so that's what the ordinance says: $60 plus the incremental charge for each $1,000 above that.
And is there have you published the rates for non-resident rates yet? I don't think folks have seen that anywhere.
So non-resident rates are double resident rates. That is referenced in the rate structure and the ordinance.
Okay. So we can just calculate that ourselves based on that information. Is this
once the sorry, Jason, not to cut you off. Once the ordinance and rate structure is adopted, we will update our calculator on our website and our portal, so businesses will be able to see for themselves what their new fee would be.
Okay. And someone posted in the chat, is this information posted anywhere on the city's website?
Yes. This presentation is posted under our city council or agendas for the October 25th meeting. I believe it was October 25th. My date might be wrong.
Yeah, it was last Monday.
Yep.
So there's a whole bunch of folks on here, some small business folks and whatnot. Any other questions? Ebony, is this supposed to save the businesses money overall or simply streamline the process? I can go ahead and answer that. The idea was really to streamline the process. If we could save money overall, that was a potential benefit. But Ebony, for businesses like yours that probably have multiple, let me go back a little bit too. We didn't hear a lot of complaints. We heard some, but not a lot of complaints about multiple jurisdictions here in the upstate. A lot of folks in the Midlands and the Low Country, a lot of businesses, particularly again, realtors, contractors, franchisees, folks like that, were getting really frustrated with the process on the coast and near and around Columbia, where they had different payment dates, different fiscal years, different methods of computing the business license, all those kind of things. And so, there were some big realtor shops, for example, that were hiring entire staff members just to deal with this issue. So the big issue is streamlining and standardizing. There were proposals on the table early on back in 2015, for example, that would have capped business licenses at $100, for example, was probably the most famous one that wound up getting a lot of discussion. When we discussed this with our membership, it was overwhelmingly supportive of the idea that we didn't need to intentionally penalize cities on this whole issue because as we ask the city for infrastructure investments, for Greenlink, for road, for 5G, for all these other kinds of things that we're trying to get the city of Greenville in our case, to invest in. It was hard for us to go at them and ask for all these increases in spending and then also turn around and hit their revenue. We have had discussions with city council candidates during elections about lowering the business license fee rate, et cetera. So those are ongoing. But again, the purpose of this law was really to standardize, streamline, and make it easier, cut red tape for small business, particularly those who are operating in multiple jurisdictions. Now, for a lot of businesses, you only operate in the city of Greenville, for example, or the city of Greer, or the city of Malden, if you're a small retailer or something. So, this is going to change. Will change a little bit about what you do, but it's not going to be a massive change compared to, Ebony, like your business, for example, where you probably operate all across the upstate. Matt, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. So again, as mentioned in the presentation, most of the businesses in the city, 85% or so of the existing businesses will see lower business license fees under this rate structure. And the city is not going to see a significant windfall of revenue. So the rate structure was designed so that we would earn less than or equal to what we earned prior to COVID. And so 2021 was actually a really good year for businesses within the city in terms of business license revenue. So if earnings return to pre-COVID levels, we may actually see a revenue decrease under this new structure.
Any other questions, comments for Matt while we have him? I will add that while we have been engaged on the Greenville issue, just because it happens to be in front of council at the moment, other cities in our county are currently going through the same process or have already done it. I think Greer is currently debating theirs, for example, and of course, a lot of our urbanized areas actually in the county, so a lot of those folks don't have to worry about this if you operate out in the county. But so I'm going to make one last call for questions from anybody. If you want to put them in the chat, feel free to do that. Great. Well, Matt, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. I want to thank Matt too. For those of you who don't deal with him on a regular basis, he's great to the chamber, always great to answer our questions whenever I've got them. It is really easy to work with. So Matt, thank you very much. And thanks for joining us today. Again, there'll be a recording of this we shared on our website and sent to the attendees along with a survey. The survey is really important to us because it helps us create new content for future Community Matters events. So I would encourage you to take it. And if you've got ideas of things you want to hear or people you want us to get to talk with you, please let us know. That's how we make sure this content is relevant for our investors. So thank you all. Have a great week. I hope you went out and voted today if you live in the city of Greenville or in some of the special purpose districts around here or in the other cities. Malden's got elections, Taylor's and Parker, et cetera, all have elections today. Please get out and vote. But thank you, Matt. We appreciate it. And if you have any other questions on this issue, please email me and I will be sure to get them to Matt and try to get answers for you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.